Hello and welcome, folks. My name is Ryan Chapman. I'm the author of SANS Forensics 528, Ransomware for Incident Responders, and I'm here to host this week's episode of Wait, Just an Infosec. This is our weekly series where we give a bit of a breakdown of the weekly ongoings, if you will. We have one of our News Bites updates coming up from Mr. Thomas Wolf. Those are pretty important to me, and I hope they are to you too, because it's important that we stay abreast of what's happening security-wise in our realm. There's a lot of stuff going on right now that, just say, I hope everyone's keeping up to date with your patch cadence and schedules. It's very, very important. So we're also going to be seeing some information, getting a little bit of a preview of the SANS DFIR Summit from Heather Mahalik and Phil Hagan, the co-chairs of the event. I don't know about the folks out there, but for me, the DFIR Summit, I've been attending them for I don't know how many years now, and they're just integral to my ongoing, like in the background of my work playlist. You know, some of the best talks, some of the things over the years where I learned it in watching that event, and then thought to myself, I should be applying that like daily or often in my job. And so I'm very, very excited and looking forward to the DFIR Summit coming up. And then also we have Mr. Lance Spitzner, who's head of the SANS Security Awareness Program, and he's going to give us a breakdown on some new stuff that just dropped, and I hope that folks will be excited by that. I know that I am, because I deal with ransomware a lot, and in doing so, I deal with, well, I guess I should say maybe not security awareness, kind of the opposite of that. So very, very happy to have additional resources out there. Speaking of out there, I see some people showing where they're from in the chat, and I'm getting some love here from all around the world. So if you could go ahead and drop a comment. Where are you from? Where are you dialing in from? What's your day like? Is it day for you? Is it night for you? What part of the world? Where are you? Where are you at? Let's see. We have some folks checking in. We've got some folks from India popping on here. Let's see. I see a couple folks saying quiet observer. No. Tell us who you are, where you're from. Hi from France, Singapore. Very cool. I love that. I love that we have this essentially this large realm of cybersecurity, and it feels so small. When you attend events, you see the same people each time, right? And it feels like we have this ongoing relationship, and we really do. And the more that we do episodes like this, the more I remember that it's not a small world. In reality, there's a lot of people out there, like this one from Philadelphia. So there's a little U.S. love in the house. South Africa, Colorado, Zimbabwe. Cool. All right. I'll just nerd out on where everyone's from for a while. No one wants to hear me keep going on with that. So very cool to see everyone in the house, so to say. I'm very, very excited for today because we have a very special guest today, Mr. Allan Ransomware Sommelier Liska. He's the author of this book on ransomware. See the title right there? More on that to come up. I've known Allan now online. We're online buddies, if you will, for a couple of years, and just one of the best in the industry when it comes to ransomware and maintaining a presence, being a constant beacon, and just understanding truly the threat and what it's all about. And we're going to get to talk about ransomware payments, and specifically, should countries ban ransomware payments? So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. For now, we're going to transition over, and we are going to listen to our News Bites segment from Mr. Thomas Wolf. So let's get into News Bites, and hopefully you're paying attention and taking notes.
Hello, and welcome to Wait Just an Infosec News Bites. I'm contributing editor and your host, Thomas Wolf. Michelle Peterson is out today and will be back with us next week. In this week's News Bites, there's an update to last week's news of the Microsoft 365 breach, Atlassian releases patches to address remote code execution vulnerabilities in their Confluence and Bamboo products. And in our last piece, Google creates a red team to test attacks against AI. So with that, let's dive right in. Following up on last week's story about a China-linked hacker group that used a stolen cryptographic key to access the Microsoft Outlook email systems of government agencies and other organizations, the list of affected government agencies stands at more than 25 and is now suspected to be much further reaching than previously thought. The forged authentication tokens allowed attackers to access Microsoft 365 enterprise email accounts, but it now seems that the stolen key provided access to many more applications, including OneDrive, SharePoint, Skype, Teams, Xbox, and more. Microsoft has confirmed security researchers' findings that the attackers could have, quote, immediate single-hop access to everything, any email box, file service, or cloud account, end quote. The investigation is proving difficult and could take months due to the lack of adequate logging related to the token verification process. Security researchers warn that despite Microsoft having revoked the key, Azure AD customers could still be affected if the attackers issued application-specific access keys or if they set up backdoors. This is a developing story, folks, so be sure to check back with us next week, as there will likely be much more to come. Atlassian released patches for 2 remote code execution vulnerabilities in Confluence Data Center and Server, and another RCE vulnerability in Bamboo Data Center. The vulnerabilities were discovered and reported through Atlassian's bug bounty program. The vulnerabilities allow attackers to modify system call actions and execute arbitrary code and requires no user interaction. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency's alert notes that these bugs could result in a system takeover. Despite AI's relative infancy, the race for AI dominance is full speed ahead. Just weeks after introducing its Secure AI framework, Google announced that it has created an AI red team. The team's focus is on executing complex technical attacks on artificial intelligence systems. Google's AI red team has 4 goals: analyze the impacts of simulated attacks, evaluate AI detection and prevention, enhance detection, and promote awareness. Google's AI red team is very similar to traditional red teams, except for its members possessing specific AI subject matter expertise, which allows them to carry out the complex specialized attacks against AI. Some of the red team's areas of focus include prompt attacks, training data extraction, data poisoning, backdooring, and exfiltration. And those are your SANS News Bites for the week. For more critical cybersecurity news and commentary from some of the sharpest minds in Infosec, don't forget to subscribe to the SANS News Bites newsletter, your twice-weekly summary and analysis of the most important, significant cybersecurity developments at sans.org/newsbites. Thanks again. I'm your host, Thomas Wolf, hoping to see you again next week.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas Wolf. Much appreciated. I hope everyone signs up for the Newsbite article. I get that, and I get the Sans Ouch newsletter. And there's not a whole lot of newsletters that I like in my inbox, but those I'm always happy to read. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. First up, hopefully you mulled it over a little bit, but now we're going to officially introduce the question of the day. All right. So what we do here is we use a tool called Slido. So you can simply, well, first off, you can just use the QR code right there on your screen and go and answer the question, or you can go to slido.com and you'll see the number to put in order to provide an answer here is 2986843. The question is, here we go. Should countries ban ransom payments, right? And you think about it, if ransom payments went away completely, would ransomware still be a thing, right? And how does that influence your decision? But I don't want to poison the well any further. We're going to let you folks respond to the question. Hopefully we get a good amount of participation. So use that QR code. Go drop your comments and thoughts in the LinkedIn or the YouTube streams. Let me know what you think. Let me know what questions you might have. We're going to be discussing that in great detail, with Mr. Allan Liska as soon as we hear from both Heather Mahalik and Phil Hagen concerning the upcoming SANS DFIR Summit, which runs Thursday and Friday, August 3rd and 4th, which is coming up in about almost 2 weeks, if that. So let's do it. Let's hear from them now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Mahalik, and I'm here with Phil Hagen to talk to you about the 2023 DFIR Summit, which is our 16th event. Phil, why should people attend the DFIR Summit?
Oh, it's going to be a great year. We've got so much cool stuff lined up. It's a 2-day event. It's both live in person in Austin, Texas, and then it's also going to be available remote for anybody else who is not able to join us in person. But it's going to be 2 complete days of technical content, and we've got speakers lined up, including SANS instructors, a whole bunch of community leaders, people who are doing leading edge research and really, really pushing the DFIR capabilities forward. And it's just going to be an excellent event, not only for the technical content, but it's always just a great time, and it's one of these must attend events for me personally. I think you've been there for pretty much every single one, haven't you?
Yes, yes, except the year I had a baby. But
Well,
honestly, the thing that makes me most excited about the D4 Summit is the networking is key. You will make friends that last a lifetime, but you will also make people or meet people that you can collaborate with, work on projects with. But just the knowledge that's in the audience and on that stage is mind blowing. As you said, the world-class talks coming from these cutting edge researchers, there's nothing like it.
yeah, absolutely. And we also have 2 keynotes lined up, which I'm really, really excited about. So again, 2 days, 2 keynotes. We've got one at the beginning of each day. On day 1, we're going to have an excellent presentation from former FBI Special Agent Chris Tarbell, who led the investigation into the Silk Road, as well as that takedown. So very, very high profile case with a lot of, honestly, industry firsts, which is going to be exciting to hear from the source. And then on day 2, we've got one of our instructors, Matt Edmondson, who's going to be, he's our instructor and he's the course author for one of our OSINT courses. He's going to be talking about open source intelligence and how that directly impacts DFIR investigations. So not only do we have community folks, we've got some real big names from the industry as well.
Yeah, and if that's not enough to draw people in, if you're live in person, there are hands-on workshops from some of our newer courses or top courses where we give you a chance to almost dive in and have an appetizer of what those courses offer. And then let's not forget printed posters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the first time in a couple of years, we've got our printed posters back in person. It's going to be that's probably one of our most requested things over the past couple of years. So we're very pumped to finally have those back, including don't we have a brand new version of the Mac Forensics poster?
Yes, the first ever, brand new, first ever poster for Forensics 518.
Yeah, so if you're into collecting them like those those animals that you go collect and want to catch them all, you can get your fill of the posters. Something else for folks who are in person, it's a $325 cost for the 2 days in total, and it's free for remote. So just want to make sure that you know that if you're not able to travel and join us, that you can absolutely jump online. We hope you're able to do that. We'll put links to registration in the notes below us or the chat as well, so you can get those. But for those in person, we mentioned the posters, those workshops on day 2, going to be fantastic. We also have a couple of in-person events that we'll be providing for people who are in Austin with us. Not only do we have networking during breaks and such, we've got, it's breakfast and lunch provided, as well as snacks and stuff. But we also have a couple of evening things to consider as well. So we've got a great night out at one of the local venues in Austin with a band that will be playing named The Spasmatics. A great time last year, and we were very excited to be able to bring them back this year. So, like you said, you're going to get a chance to just interact and network with people from across, honestly, the world, and get a chance to build your network that's going to be lasting into the future as well.
We really hope to see you there.
Yeah, it'd be great. Now there'll be links and such in the notes to being able to register, and again, both live or remotely. We're happy to have you. Let us know what you're thinking. The agenda will also be posted with all of our talks in the simultaneous tracks that we're going to have on day 1. The workshops are listed. Those workshops are space limited. So if you're going to attend, make sure that you sign up. And then when you sign up, make sure you go so that you can get the material ahead of time. Great way to taste test some of our newer courses. And let us know what you think. Take a look at the agenda. Give us some feedback on what you're looking forward to most. If you're going to be attending in person, drop a line. Connect with folks on LinkedIn ahead of time if you'd like to, so that you're meeting up with friends there when you hit the ground instead of getting to know you while you're in Austin.
Yeah, let us know what you're most excited about. Post it in the chat. And also don't forget to vote for the Forensic Forecast Awards. I think voting closes this week. Lee Whitfield will present that live on day 2 of the summit. And if you're virtual, you can watch it, but it's always amazing to see Lee in person presenting these awards.
And just to be clear, Lee is very careful about not letting us know what he's planning. We have no earthly idea. It's always fantastic, though. So it's certainly worth your time to check that out and definitely vote as well.
All right. I really hope folks are able to attend that. If you can go in person, freaking fantastic. Going online, though, is still such a great experience. Just throwing out a random thing here, a little bit of love to Thiago. I might mess your last name up, Lars. Unix-like artifact collector, UAC. It's technically a random talk that I heard at the D1 Summit in, gosh, I forget what year now, 2022, I want to say, or was it maybe the year before? We use it all the time now in the industry. We're analyzing a ESX box, whatever it is. We just throw that tool against it, collect artifacts. It's just the type of talk that you see at that event. And I just absolutely love it. A little shout out and love to him. It's something I thought of right now. What was the most useful thing I saw last time? Well, I use this thing almost every day, right? That's awesome. So, okay. Now we're going to introduce our guest for the day, who will pop on screen right there. All right. Mr. Allan, Ransomware Sommelier, Liska. How's it going, good sir?
Good, man. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm good. I'm excited, as you can tell. I'm my coffee's hitting.
Good. Mine too, so that's good.
Yeah, you're missing the sign behind you though, the sommelier sign.
My office is being redone. We're having bookshelves put in, and unfortunately, this conference timed up badly with remodeling. So you'll have to have me back on when it's done, because the sign will be back there lit up along with a bunch of other toys and things.
Oh, very cool. All right, cool. We can both have nerdy offices together.
Mine will never be as cool as yours, but it'll definitely be nerdy.
I have to turn the lights off and put the black lights on, and it looks like it's like nighttime in my room. And sometimes people are at the house like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm on the internet." I'm being cool on the internet. All right. So for folks who are not aware, Allan, and if you're not aware, shame on you, is the author of this little guy right here, Ransomware: Understand, Prevent, and Recover. I've got your original version, and then the second edition here. And Allan, I've been following you for, I don't know, a number of years now. I guess we've seen each other online. You want to give just a quick intro and let folks know who you are, what you're up to?
Yeah. So, like you said, my name's Allan Liska. I'm an intelligence analyst / ransomware researcher at Recorded Future. Sadly, I've been researching ransomware for a really long time. I started doing it when I was at FireEye back in 2014-15, and just have continued through there. So clearly I'm not making the world better, since it's only getting worse, but I'm trying to keep everybody informed and up to date.
Awesome. Definitely appreciate that. For folks who might not know, how is perverse the right word? I think so. Complex and perverse ransomware truly is. If you go to FOR528.com/ecosystem, it'll take you to the OCD World Watch ransomware ecosystem map put out by Orange Cyber Defense. And just an example of the type of groups that over the years I learned about. Some of the groups you'll see in this poster, it's like a poster, if you will, or PDF from Allan and in his posts and various things. Threat actors just constantly move from one group to another, but we're about to go down a rabbit hole, and we have something else to talk about, very, very specific, and that is ransomware payments. So can we pull up Slido? Let's see if we have those results right now. Let's see what our audience said. All right. 48% of the audience said, yeah, we should ban ransomware payments at the country level, if you will, right? 32% said, I'm not sure. And then 20% said no. So I'm interested to hear from the folks who participated. If you can drop some comments into, if you're looking at us or watching us on YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever it might be, just drop some reasoning and some notes in there. And Allan, I think that it would only be right. I would be remiss if I didn't turn it over to you and just get your initial feeling on the topic.
No, that's sort of the short answer is no, I don't think so. I am absolutely against ransom payments. I don't think anybody should ever pay a ransom for a whole lot of reasons I'm sure we'll get into. Making it illegal is not going to solve the problem. It might in the short term lower ransom payments, but that's not been my experience. I am much more of a proponent of requiring reporting ransom payments. When you make a ransom payment, you have to report it to a government body, and that information is made public so that people can track and understand what's really happening with ransomware. I think that's a more effective solution in the short term. But I'm absolutely persuadable that we should just ban all payments.
So I think personally, I know I've thought about this a lot actually,
Yeah.
that if you were to say, I mean, technically, if no one ever paid a ransomware payment, ransomware would probably just go away, right? It would just cease to exist. Wouldn't that be a perfect little world? Oh, sure. But the decision really comes down to, in my mind, a utilitarian decision. What is going to do the most good for the most number of people, right? Of human beings. And oftentimes, you end up in the situation where paying the ransom might make sense. And in those situations, while it pains me, and while I've seen communications and back and forths and chats with negotiations, is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
With threat actors, I'm like, what's that word we use every day? It sucks to see it, but sometimes like, ooh, it's a rough one. It's a rough one. So what do you think would be the most positive aspect if countries were to ban ransomware, aside from it going away?
So so that and the problem is I don't know that it would go away, because the ransomware actors are criminals. They assume everybody that they interact with is also a criminal, or at least dishonest, and they assume that people will find a way to pay a ransom if they can. And so one of the side effects of this, and we saw this, we use this sort of analogy of payments for kidnappers. So in 1991, Italy banned paying ransom to kidnappers. In fact, they went so far as to not just ban payments of ransom payments, but they actually froze assets of families that reported kidnappings to prevent them from paying a ransom. And the result of that is that the number of kidnappings went up for 2 years straight before they started going down, because the kidnappers knew that they'd have the ability to not only get a ransom payment from the families that could figure out how to skirt the law, but then they could also extort them. Double extortion, we're all familiar with that term at this point. For paying the ransom, they could blackmail them so that the kidnappers wouldn't report them to the government.
That I'm very happy. First off, I love that you brought a real world example instead of just, well, I think like Ryan over here. But I love how you gave that example of the secondary level of extortion or tertiary or whatever it might be at that point. Whereas someone in the chat, mentioned, how would banning, I'm paraphrasing, I apologize in the chat. How would banning ransomware payment stop any different? Essentially, like, well, we ban payments to cocaine dealers, right? To hard drug dealers, right? It doesn't stop the purchasing of that. And my immediate comment back was, yeah, but you don't often see cocaine dealers who run out and tell the world, hey, that guy just bought cocaine from me. That guy just bought a bunch of drugs from me, right? Like, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't put themselves out, on Front Street like that. Whereas a ransomware group might be quite prone to do that, to show their prowess and like, hey, check it out. This big old huge, chain of hospitals, they just gave us $7 million. Like, hey, we're so special, and that kind of thing. So I think that's something we should all kind of pay attention to, is if you make it illegal and there are situations where it is quote unquote required or felt required, then what happens? You're putting that organization into a precarious spot where now all of a sudden, what are they going to do? Are they just going to add, say there's a fine? Are they just going to add that to their loss and look at, for cost benefit analysis? Is that all it is? Or is it going to be something more insidious where certain governments put a ban, but also put, laws in place, consequences that are not just financial, and then in those situations, if they make those decisions and they might feel they truly need to, even though it is against the law, the letter of the law, right, as some folks refer to it, oops, that could get kind of ugly. So we have some questions here in chat. I like this one. This is a good one for you, Allan. Jamie asks, how is banning illegal, untraceable activity bannable? So how can you ban untraceable? Yeah, there it is right there. All right. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of traceability?
So I think that first we need to dispel the myth that cryptocurrency payments are untraceable. In fact, if you look at what companies like Chainalysis are doing, cryptocurrency transactions are really traceable. Like dropping a pile of cash at a dead drop and letting the bad guy pick it up there, that is much more untraceable than a ransomware payment, especially with Bitcoin, which, because all the transactions live in the blockchain. If you have the right technology, if you have the right intelligence, and if you have the right threat actors who eventually make OPSEC mistakes where you can connect those transactions to at least an email address, if not a person, it's actually relatively easy to trace a lot of these transactions. That's how the governments have been able to claw back some of the ransom payments, which is another reason I advocate for reporting, because the faster you report, the more likely it is that a government can say, hey, we're going to go ahead and get that money back for you. I mean, not for you. We're going to hold it because it's evidence for who knows how long. And it may be worth a lot more money by the time you get it, or it may be worth 5 cents, depending on what cryptocurrency is doing that day. But
yes, and there was a big push I noticed it personally in more 2021. I might be a Ryan thing, but from moving from Bitcoin to Monero, as in terms of the request by the threat actors, specifically because it's a little more difficult to trace. You don't have as wide open of an open ledger system, if you will. And groups out there like Chainalysis is a great example, of who do a really good job of tracing those wallet IDs. And for folks who are not aware, when you pay cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin as an example, you get a wallet ID. Essentially, it's a unique ID, right? And that unique ID is where you provide that payment. Well, the payments from one ID to the other are essentially open source, if you will. Called open source. So tracking those and understanding who owns one and then who might be giving money to those and seeing their origins and things of that nature is kind of how that activity occurs. So Monero makes it a bit more difficult. And there were a number of threat actors, including like DarkSide, on their data leak site. I want to say it was 2021. They had at the top, and it would say like, if you pay by this date, it'll be less of a payment because, if you take too long, the payment goes up, kind of thing. And it didn't say that you'd save if you paid via Monero. It specifically said there would be a fee if you paid via Bitcoin. And so it's psychologically, they're really trying to get and manipulate people into like, don't pay us with Bitcoin. We'd prefer Monero because, kind of thing. But even so, yeah, they're very traceable activity. And there's some extremely interesting things out there when you have a new group, for example, that spends up and gets a Bitcoin wallet. And then people just start tracking that. Are their payments going to that? Kind of thing.
Yeah. And, and so the problem with Monero is it's really hard to source the amount of Monero needed to pay some of these high dollar ransoms. If a ransomware actor hits you with a $5 million ransom demand, it is really hard to get $5 million in Monero, at least in the short term. And like even most companies that will help facilitate ransom payments don't keep that much Monero around versus Bitcoin. So, the ransomware actors aren't going to take lower ransom payments. Like you said, they'll charge an extra fee for Bitcoin, but they're not going to say, oh, you can only get, 2 million in Monero. So yeah, we'll take that. So lucky for us, their greed will do them in.
Allan, are you saying you don't have $5 million in Monero just lying around?
I mean, I do, obviously.
Okay. Of course. course.
Right. I mean, you can see the palatial mansion that I'm obviously in. So paid for entirely in Monero.
Can you imagine? Just so folks are aware, sourcing any amount of Bitcoin, like any amount, let alone hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, is not an overnight thing. I wanted to, and I can't believe I'm about to admit this right now, and I wish I could pull back, but I'm already too far. I purchased some Dogecoin. Remember Dogecoin? Everyone remember, oh, to the moon, and I was like, why not, right? I'll put $200-300 in it. Might as well. Yeah, great decision, whatever. But just trying to get that amount, I was surprised. It took me like 5-6 days in order to get it. I had to try 3 different exchanges before I found one that wanted to work with me for such a large amount. Like I was quite surprised. And Monero is even more difficult. So yeah, that's pretty darn important. Okay, let's see. We have some other questions in the chat here. And I think a lot of this is folks commenting on essentially rewarding bad behavior via payments being a, I guess a slippery slope, or technically just right down the slope. And a comment here that the victim will find a workaround to avoid the country block. And I truly believe, yeah, right there it is. I truly believe that is the case. What are your thoughts on the ease with which victims might be able to do that, or what do you think there?
Sure. I mean, people do that with cash now, right? You throw it into a bank account in the Cayman Islands, or you throw it in a bank account in Switzerland, and your cash is suddenly untraceable. And that's the problem. You in the United States can ban ransom payments, and the European Union can ban ransom payments, and Australia and Asia Pac can all ban ransom payments. The Cayman Islands isn't going to. So if you have an office in the Cayman Islands and there's a cryptocurrency exchange there, then there you go. You've made your ransom payment. I mean, hell, if you needed to, you could use a Russian cryptocurrency mixer to process your funds, because Russia's not going to ban ransom payments, because that's where all the bad guys are. There are definite ways around this if you have the resources. And again, that's what this hurts. Let's say you're a small rural hospital, you get hit with ransomware, patients disrupted. We saw the hospital in Illinois that went out of business in part because of a ransomware attack. So imagine patient services are disrupted. It's 3 hours to the next hospital, which is unfortunately very common in parts of rural United States. They need to get back up and running. They need to make the ransom payment. They don't have the ability to launder money through the Cayman Islands or anything like that. And so they're going to bear the brunt of a law like this without without having the resources to deal with it, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate ransomware actors go after hospitals, but we know they're evil bastards. We're not going to be able to change that, not without drone strikes. And so we are stuck with we've got to craft laws that will help victims, not make things worse.
Allan letting his truth kinetic response. All right, no comment on that one. So there's a number of folks who are asking questions that all essentially hover around if the government is going to make some type of decision like that. If a government is going to make a decision like that, then what do they need to do for the businesses and the organizations? So essentially saying you cannot do something that would potentially save your business from completely ceasing to exist, right? But then not providing some form of in order to avoid having to do that in the first place. There's an onus that falls upon the individual or the organization or the board or investors group, whatever it may be, to protect the business, right? But then where do we then start delineate like differences of who's responsible for what? You have your operating system vendors like Microsoft, who in order to have a truly amazing lockdown, not fully, you'll never have fully locked down, but an amazing security product in your environment to protect your own Microsoft infrastructure, you have to purchase it through Microsoft, right? Windows Defender, APT, E5 licenses for all your M365 subscriptions, things of that nature. And then you have on the government side regulations with things like when you're working with payment cards, the payment card industry and stuff, PCI. and what you have to have in place. But are there going to be any of those types of things or types of regulations or even support to meet any of those regulations were governments to just outright ban ransomware? Do you have to have like minimums? Do you have to have maybe like a firewall? Like, is that something that's required? So, Allan, what are your thoughts on some things that maybe the government could possibly do to help? And let's just use the United States as an example. You know, if the United States government wanted to step in and say, hey, you cannot pay ransomware payments, and in order to kind of facilitate that or to help with that, we're going to provide blah. What do you think some of those things might be?
Yeah. So let's look at North Carolina. Last year, North Carolina passed a law banning ransom payments by public entities. First of all, for those asking, ransomware attacks against public entities in North Carolina did not decrease after the ransomware law was passed. So they not only banned for public entities to pay a ransom, but to even negotiate with ransomware actors, which, you know, I wrote at the time was a huge mistake, because there's so much valuable information that can be gathered from a negotiation that has nothing to do with ransom payments. And the other thing I complained about is they didn't do anything to improve the security of those public entities. So that law was all stick, but there was no carrot. There was no, you know, like, oh, hey, you know, and especially for public entities, which are under the control of North Carolina, it's different with private entities, where you could say things like, okay, we're going to fund an EDR, like a universal EDR program. We're going to create like a centralized SOC where we can do the monitoring, because each school system can't afford to have 24/7 monitoring. Each local government can't afford to have local monitoring, but you could centralize that data collection and provide like baseline, detection and analysis for those public entities. And that wasn't done because that's really expensive. Whereas passing a law that says ban, no ransom payments and no negotiations is cheap. It doesn't cost anything, and you get political points because it looks like you're doing something, which is what I'm afraid would happen with a law like that. It's easy to pass a law saying no ransom payments. It's really hard to improve security. We've been trying to do it for 30 years and have kind of failed. And there are things that we can do to provide better funding for security, but that tends to be for public entities or critical infrastructure. We're not going to provide, here's free security tools for, every small, medium-sized business that's out there. That's not practical. And even if we did, most of them wouldn't have the resources to be able to implement that properly.
Wouldn't be able to implement it, wouldn't be able to maintain it, wouldn't be able to even just tune after implementing it, just be alert fatigue, most out-the-box solutions. Anyways, I'm going to go on.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go on a rant here about they're not just a bolt on, like, boop, we're safe. Like, doesn't work that way. And I think we keep hearing about how we have this massive need for cybersecurity practitioners. And I think that ransomware is doing a really good job of kind of bringing to light how big of a problem this truly is. And so I'm in the state of Arizona in the United States, and we have a cyber coalition run by the Phoenix, which is our main city in Arizona, capital city is what I'm looking for here. It's an Infosec pipeline essentially. And so you have representatives of all the major schools, and you have large privatized organizations who come in, and a lot of the security organizations and banking institutes. They're all part of this coalition, and their whole thing is to like really, really push cybersecurity education and training and tooling and all of those things. And that all sounds great, but then the onus of the organizations, or the onus is still on the organizations to be able to afford it, and we're just at least just trying to get more people that are capable of these things. But it's such a disparity that we have in the industry that the government could, come in and say, hey, you all get so-and-so EDR for free. It's like, okay. Like, I'm not sure how much that's really going to help, to be honest.
Right. And we see that time and time again. I mean, even where they do have some level of control with small towns, municipalities, they can come in and they can provide free DR, a free EDR capability. But once the government leaves, that EDR tends to sit and rot because, you're not updating it. And EDR, like SOAR, like SIMs, take a lot of care and feeding.
There's something in the chat I want to bring up right now, and it Rob mentions US Gov has already provided ample guidelines with examples including NIST, CIS, ISO, right there on the screen, that if followed would severely curtail successful ransomware attacks. Now, I don't know if any folks out there are not familiar with, for example, NIST. In the United States, we have this institution. What's it stand for? Do you recall, Allan? National Institute
of Science and Technology.
Standards and Technology. We're both like, I was like right there with you. They have a number of frameworks, including frameworks for your backup methodologies, your incident response planning, business continuity, disaster recovery, like all these amazing things. That is a really, really good point that Rob threw out there. The problem is I see with that is that those are fantastic things to have, but so few organizations have the time and the knowledge to sift through all of those and adapt them to their individual organizations. But at the same time, they are very, very important. You know, at SANS, we map our courses to NIST standards, you know, and we give things like the NICE framework in the United States. NICE, like that's nice. Is you know, a methodology of ascribing, I guess, career-oriented tasking to different career fields, you know, jobs and positions and things like that. And we try to map those at SANS here with our training and say like, oh, well, if you're following these NIST frameworks and guidelines, then these courses would be, you know, conducive to that kind of thing. So those are great to point out. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I mean, we at Recorded Future, we do the same thing. We follow NIST guidelines and we follow ISO guidelines. We also have a security staff of 15, right? We have the ability to do that, and we have a separate compliance team that can also work with that. Most organizations don't have that ability, you know, and that is the, you know, where the problem with the standards are. Standards are great. It's really hard for small organizations to meet those standards or even be aware of them.
So when you mention small organizations, someone in the chat also mentioned like, well, hold on, are we talking about banning any and all ransomware payments, including like what I would say, I use the term a lot, a mom and pop shop, right? You know, a really store, a dentist office or something like that, or just a family that owns a business versus an enterprise where there's, you know, millions of dollars being demanded. So I think that, let's say, yeah, that's it. Oh, you found it. Oh, they're quick. I remembered it from earlier. They're like, boom, got it, Ryan. So yeah, exactly. Now, by the way, when Allan and I typically refer to ransomware, we typically referring to the large enterprise scale ransomware. There still are variants and families of ransomware that do target individuals. It's just not necessarily something that we often talk about with this ecosystem of all these different major, huge attacks. When was the last time you actually dealt with one of those little more like targeted little guys? I working in consulting, I haven't in 4 years because we just don't get those cases.
I get called into those a lot, just because I'm known, and so I'll get a call from a friend of a friend. Hey, my and in fact, you know, we saw a big uptick over the last year in ransomware attacks against auto dealerships, against real estate offices, against, you mentioned, dental offices. Like these tend to be what we think of as small businesses, but sometimes they can be like the largest business in their community. You know, like an auto dealership can employ more than 100 people, but they don't have a security team. They have a guy named Jed that comes in once every couple of weeks to apply patches and things like that. And that's the extent of their security. And you know, and so when they're hit with ransomware, the ransom demand tends to be in the $25,000, maybe $30,000 range, but that can still be devastating. And they don't have the resources to recover from that. They can't bring in a Mandiant to handle incident response or, you know, or CrowdStrike or anybody like that. And so so they're all, again, they're often forced to pay the ransom because otherwise they're going to go out of business, and they're going to cost 100 people their jobs in that community.
Utilitarian. That's why, right? Okay, Allan, you and I can gab on all day long forever, but we have to close our time together here. So can you please let folks know what's going on with you? Where can they find you? You have any cool projects going on? What do you want to lead with?
So I am very excited that we just did a successful crowdfunding campaign for the first comic book based on a radio serial about a insurance investigator who covers ransomware attacks. So that was pretty exciting. And you'll see the yours truly Johnny Dollar comic book come out sometime in October. Otherwise, just follow me on Twitter or connect with me on LinkedIn. And Ryan, as always, thank you. This was a fantastic conversation.
As usual, I love talking with you, and I'm getting my copy. I got a signed copy, so which I just realized I don't have a signed copy of your book. That's ridiculous.
All right. Well,
You sent some for my conference that we gave away. I gave them all away. I should have kept one. All right, cool.
Remind me and I'll send you one. No problem.
All right, good deal. Allan, thank you for coming on to the show. It was great seeing you, man.
Thank you. Always great to see you.
All right. Okay, so we are going to now hear from Mr. Lance Spitzner. We have a new report out, a 2023 SANS Security Awareness Report. So security awareness is near and dear to my heart because, as Allan and I have just been talking about ransomware, some of the primary infection vectors for initial access to ransomware are essentially failures in security awareness. And so whenever I can work with Lance or his crew and his team, I get really excited. So without further ado, let's see what Lance has to say.
Hey folks, my name's Lance Spitzner and I am a SANS instructor. My specialty and passion is helping organizations with the human side of cybersecurity. Now, I've been in cybersecurity for over 25 years now. Now, the first half, I really focused on the technical side. So like many of you, I have a lot of experience in the technical controls and technical ways to approach cybersecurity. But in the last half of my career, about the past 10 or so years, I've really focused on the human side because I feel that is where we can make the biggest difference. Think about it. In today's world, the human is the primary attack vector. In fact, for the past 4 years, the Verizon DBIR has identified that people are involved in over 70 to 80% of all breaches. And that's been consistent for the past 4 years. So cybersecurity is no longer just a technical challenge, but also a human challenge. And we really need to start addressing both. And that is why I'm so excited to share with you the release of this year's annual SANS Security Awareness Report. Very much inspired by the Verizon DBIR and the Verizon team, this report is a data-driven report that focuses on the human side of cybersecurity. And the whole purpose of this free report is to enable you to make data-driven decisions on how to better manage your human risk. So we're not just providing a bunch of fun, interesting facts, but action items and lessons learned that you can apply immediately to your organization. So I just want to highlight a couple of those key findings. So first and foremost, one of the most interesting things is we call the report the SANS Security Awareness Report, and you'll hear me commonly use the term security awareness, but we're already seeing in this field, when it comes to managing human risk, people are using all sorts of different terms. Some people call their program the Behavior and Culture Program, Security Training and Education, Security Engagement and Influence, or we're even seeing organizations call the individuals and their programs the Human Risk Officer or the Human Risk Management Program. So first, we're less concerned what you call your program. Is it security awareness, behavior, culture, engagement, influence, communications, human risk? What we are focused on and concerned about is enabling you to approach and manage the human side of cybersecurity. Security awareness is no longer just about the annual computer-based training. It's all about engaging, training, and enabling your workforce to exhibit secure behaviors. And it's no longer just about prevention, but detection and response. Not only the human firewall, but the human sensor. So a couple of key findings I just wanted to share with you for this report. First, it's no longer just one individual. If you truly want to manage your human risk, you need to have multiple people on your team dedicated to the human side of cybersecurity. One of my biggest frustrations is a lot of times people will declare the human is the weakest link. If only people did what we told them, on and on, blaming people. And yet, when you look at the security team, there might be 50 people on the security team, and out of those 50, 49 are focused on the technology side, and maybe half of one person is focused on the human side. And then we wonder why people continue to be the primary attack vector. So one of the very first things that this report identifies is that the organizations that we see that have the most mature programs, that are most effectively managing their human risk, it's just not one random person assigned responsibility for the overall program, or even worse, one person part-time assigned responsibility. The organizations most effectively managing their human risk have a team of people dedicated to it. 3, 4, 5, in some case 6, 7. How many should you have? Well, it depends on the organization size, how global you are, the industry, but we recommend at least 3 full-time employees effectively managing your human risk. Now, these don't have to be security experts. People coming or approaching on the human side can have all sorts of backgrounds. I'm a history major, English majors, specialties in communication, engagement, training, organizational change. In fact, sometimes having those human skills are more important than having security skills because, and this is the second point, whoever is in charge of managing your human risk, security awareness, security culture, security behavior, they need to be part of the security team. If your security awareness, culture, behavior, whatever you want to call it, reports to human resources, reports to legal, reports to audit, then you're going to be compliance focused because you're just siloed and focused on checking the box. But if that human risk team is part of your overall security team, then they can work with the security operations center, work with the incident response team, work with cyber threat intelligence to help identify, hey, what are our top human risks? Hey, what are the TTPs that the latest cyber threat actors are using to target our workforce? Hey, incident response, what's the biggest drivers of incidents that we've seen in the past? By having your security awareness team, or whatever you call, actively partnering with the rest of your security team, you can better identify and manage your human risk. That's why your security awareness team doesn't need to be hardcore technical security experts. That you already have that hardcore technical experts on the rest of your security team. What your security awareness behavior culture team needs to do, take that wealth of info from the rest of your security team, translate that to the human side, then engage, train, and enable your workforce to be more secure. So one of the key takeaways we've learned, if you want to truly manage your human risk, invest in it by growing your team. This is a people problem. People are the solution. Yes, technology dramatically helps, but we can only go so far in tech. We need to go into the human side. Now, one of the other key findings we have found is for the security awareness, behavior, and culture teams out there, when you're talking to the security team, when you're talking to leadership, don't talk in terms of what you're doing. Don't go running around and saying, hi, my name's Lance. I'm the security awareness officer, and we're doing all these great things. Why, last week we had a guest speaker. Next week we're going to kick off a big interactive gamified capture the flag. The following week we've got some awesome micro videos, then maybe a little bit of escape room. When you keep talking in terms of what you're doing, that's all great stuff, engaging and training. But quite often it sounds like we are in the entertainment business. So instead of talking in terms of what you're doing, talk in terms of why you're doing it. Hey, leadership, my name's Lance, and I'm in charge of our security awareness program. Did you know that last year, 78% of all of our incidents were driven by people in our workforce? People are our greatest risk because they are now the primary attack vector. My job is to dramatically reduce that risk by engaging, training, and enabling our workforce to be more secure so we can make the latest use of our technology, to include supporting our new digital transformation initiative. See the difference? By talking in terms of what you're doing, manage the human risk, you're far more likely to get support. All right, folks, that report has lots of other great information to include compensation rates for security awareness professionals, how much the average salary is, and what you can do to increase yours. Thank you so much. Catch you in cyberspace.
Awesome. Thank you, Lance, very, very much. I cannot stress how important basically everything he just said was. At 2 jobs ago, we hired someone from the outside who had zero cybersecurity specific experience, but she was very, very good training wise. And we pulled her into our security operations center and we had her sit with us and we would just talk to her about the things we were seeing. And it was less of her going to the internet. Well, what threats are out there and what are news, reports talking about? And more of like, this is what we see. See that right there? We need to stop that. And she'd be like, okay, got it. And crafted everything. Oh, it was just wonderful. So yes, very much appreciate that. And I hope folks are able to go check out that report. It's very, very important. Cannot stress that enough. I want to thank everyone as we wrap up this episode. So shout outs and thank you to Thomas Wolf for your News Bite segment, Heather and Phil, and do not forget the upcoming DFIR Summit on Thursday and Friday, August 3rd and 4th. And of course, Lance, go read that report, check it out. And I'd be crazy to not mention a massive, big internet hug and thank you to Mr. Allan Ransomware Sommelier, Liska. Thanks, man. I really appreciate our conversations. And I think folks learned a lot from you today. And I'm glad that we could have you on. So tune in next week. Our host is going to be Rob M. Lee. And if anyone has not yet seen him without his signature beard, you're in for a surprise. So check that out next week. He is the CEO and co-founder of Dragos. And of course, he is an ICS and OT operational technology wizard. And I'm excited to see what he has to share with us. Thank you for joining me. Again, my name is Ryan Chapman. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about ransomware and come hang out with me a little bit more, I'm going to be running a free workshop. You can check the link, which will be on the screen very shortly. There it is, FOR528.com/workshop23. It's coming up on August 16th. It is free, completely free. It's going to be 2 hours. You're going to get a custom virtual machine designed by, me, duh. And we're going to walk you through one of our labs on malicious script analysis. So the lab is about 40 to 60 minutes in the class, and we're going to go even further. We're going to be looking at Cobalt Strike beacon downloaders in PowerShell. We're going to be deobfuscating PowerShell code, and we're going to be looking at some shell code and doing some shell code analysis. It's going to be a really good time. So check that out. Again, it's free, so why not? Thank you to the Just an Infosec team for having me on once again. And I will be back in about a month's time or something like that. And until then, I hope everyone stays safe out there. All right. Thanks.